Welcome to part 2 of our interview with Professor Richard Wolff. And surprisingly, people are sick of establishment politics all around the world. So right now, corporations are sitting on record amounts of cash, and stock market is higher than it's ever been. And workers still are penniless. 63% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So there's a disconnect, and there has been in this country's economy since the late 70s between productivity and workers' pay compensation. They've been decoupled, right? So no matter how good the economy does, no matter how much money or profit corporations can gin up, that never seems to, as Ronald Reagan promised us, trickle down. It never trickled down to us, which is why I think, and I want to get your opinion on this, which is why people are fed up with the political establishment and they voted a guy like Trump in. Do you think that because they've done this, they've voted for the lesser of two evils for the last 30 years, and they realized that it getting them anywhere and nothing, and finally when we bailed out the economy in Wall Street, and we did it on the backs of those people, and Barack Obama never bailed out Main Street. So people they finally caught on that both parties are screwing them at every turn, and they wanted an outsider. They wanted Bernie Sanders on the left, and they got Donald Trump on the right. Well, because the Democrats cheated, we didn't get Bernie Sanders and a Donald Trump matchup. We got an establishment hack like Hillary Clinton against an outsider like Donald Trump, and of course, Donald Trump won. So do you agree with my assessment that's what led to this kind of election, and it was because people only think one election cycle at a time? And I have to tell people you have to think further than one election cycle. So go ahead and take your time and answer that.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you literally 100%. You see that? You don't need a PhD in economics. You can figure it out perfectly well without it. And I take my hat off to you. Absolutely. Absolutely. The American people had been promised that the economy would get better, that they would be taken care of, that prosperity was around the corner, that progress is my middle name, and all the rest. And they got it from the Democrats, they got it from the Republicans, and they've had it. And of course, they turned massively to Bernie on the left and to Trump on the right. And by the way, if you wanted more evidence, it's happening all over the capitalist world. In England right now, the person who literally looks a little like Bernie is about to become the new prime minister in England, a guy named Jeremy Corbyn. If you look at what's happening in Germany or Italy or any of the other major European countries, you see the same thing. The old establishment political parties have lost support. People are looking to the left, they're looking to the right, but they're saying anybody but the people who have lied to us and have done nothing to change the direction of more and more inequality all around us. And so I think we're headed for real trouble, especially because in the case of Mr. Trump and the Republicans, not only are they not doing what's needed to stop this process, they're making it worse. Let me just give you one example. Something that the Democrats have been doing for years, the Republicans are now going to go them one better. They're going to eliminate what's called the estate tax or the inheritance tax.
I know.
This is an amazing story.
I know.
We have the whole idea of an inheritance tax is a very old and good idea that used to be taken seriously by Americans. And the idea is a level playing field, that a child born innocent into the world ought not to be able, by the sheer luck of who he was born to or who she was born into, to be able to have every advantage while another baby is born into a family that can't afford to provide them with food, let alone tutors and supports of every kind. So to have a level playing field, you tax inheritance, so at least to some degree, we all start off with the same chance in life. That's what the idea was. Well, the Democrats permitted that the amount of money you can now, before Trump does anything, the amount of money a couple can leave to their children without paying any federal inheritance tax is already $11 million. In other words, most rich people already escaped. There were only a few thousand, I think 3,000 or 4,000 families rich enough to be leaving so much that they would actually have to pay a tax. Only 40% of what they leave over $11 million would be taxed. And the Republicans and Mr. Trump have just decided they're going to get rid of any inheritance tax. And you know what that means? It means that the inequality that has built up over the last 30 years is now going to be made perpetual. You know what this is like? This is like feudalism. This is like kings leaving their wealth to their sons, who would leave it to their sons. Everybody else learns the new name of the king, but that nothing else changes because the wealth is good. It's the opposite of equal opportunity. It's the opposite of a fair chance for everybody. And it is making the American people bitter and angry. And it's very clear that there's lots of justification, because this is a capitalist system that is not being held back, is not being reversed the way the Roosevelts did, because there's no political movement yet able to make that happen.
So, you talk about there's no political movement making that happen, and after World War II, people don't realize the perverted times that we live in right now, because the left got wiped out in America, the political left that could push back against the bastards, push back against the corporations and the Koch brothers and their ilk. The people who could do that got wiped out through McCarthyism and the Red Scare. And they would literally send FBI guys to schools, to elementary schools, and get teachers and pull them out and say they were communists, and they would get blackballed because they were union leaders. So that's how they crushed unions, and they've been decimated ever since. And so that's why, again, there's no social institutions left in America to push back, as I call them, against the bastards, against the establishment, against the oligarchy. And, the estate tax is one of those things that was supposed to make sure we didn't have an aristocracy in the United States.
Exactly.
But we're going to now. We have that now. And so can you just real quickly, I mean, is my assessment correct that that's what happened to the left after World War II? And now the left is now pushing a crazy Red Scare?
I think what you saw after World War II was the revenge of that part of the business community and the wealthy who were bitter and angry at what happened in the 1930s. They were bitter and angry that Roosevelt had cut a deal with the unions and the socialists and the communists to tax corporations and the rich to create Social Security, unemployment insurance, public jobs, and all the rest. And they were smart enough, those businesses and those rich people, to know that the problem wasn't Roosevelt. He wouldn't have done that if he hadn't been under pressure from below. So the way you defeated that, the way you roll back the New Deal of the 1930s, was to destroy that coalition that had formed of communists, socialists, and trade unionists. So what you did, very logically, you figured out what is the weak link, what can we attack first? So you attacked the communists. You didn't attack them for being leaders of the union. You attacked them for being agents of a foreign power. That sounds scary. That's something you can get people wigged out about. And as soon as you got rid of them, you went after the socialists, did pretty much the same thing. And then you went much harder to go after the trade unions. But if you take a look at trade unions, they've been losing members for 50 years in an uninterrupted slide into the reality today, which Americans don't even know, that only 6.5% of private sector workers in America are either members of or represented by a union. The unions have lost all of their muscle. So it was a right-wing revenge that worked. It destroyed the three institutions, political party, left, socialist, communist, and the trade union movement. And so it's now, if I can use a metaphor, a few years ago, we had a very strange mayor in New York City who believed that the police should have unlimited power. The man's name was Rudolph Giuliani. I'm sure you know him. And when he won the election, a group of unruly cops went around New York City saying, everybody watch out, it's Giuliani time in New York. Well, the election of Mr. Trump has made it Trump time in America. Every dream of the corporations, Koch brothers and others, to wipe out any opposition to making America the dream place for corporations to make profits and keep them for himself, that's what they've created. And the only amazing thing for me as an American citizen, born here and grown up here and lived here all my life, is the ability, the stunning ability of Mr. Trump and the others to present themselves to the American people as heroes, as defenders of the middle class, as they systematically wipe them out. It is an amazing testimony to the power of befuddling people.